Check out the magic of design boards for quilting. They're quick and easy to make, but can be worth their weight in gold when it comes to keeping your fabric pieces organized and together. These boards are lightweight, stackable, and easy to customize with no sewing and no hot glue. And you can easily make them in any size you need. Hi, I'm Beth Williams, a longtime quilter, teacher, and designer. And I find design boards particularly helpful when I'm making blocks like this, when I need to audition fabrics or keep them in a particular order or gradation. For complex blocks like this, where there are multiple units and subunits that could easily get mixed up or rotated the wrong way between the sewing machine and the pressing area and back again. For applique blocks like this, especially when I want to work in batches without mixing up the colors or pieces for each block. And for keeping components together when I plan to thread paint an image before adding borders. Or for fun projects like planning a batch of fabric postcards. Since one side of each board is smooth and the fabric will only stick to the batting side, I can stack multiple boards up and keep all my bits and pieces safe. Are you ready to make some boards for yourself? We'll start with some inexpensive foam core board. I bought a multi-pack of 20-inch by 30-inch boards with a 3/16-inch foam core from a chain store for less than $2 per board. You can cut your boards to whatever size works best for you. My favorite sizes are 20 inches by 20 inches, 15 by 15 inches, and 10 inches by 10 inches. I find that the board cuts easily with a rotary cutter with an old blade, not your good blade, an old one, a box cutter, or an X-Acto knife. Now let's talk about some of the other supplies you'll need. Start with a piece of foam core cut to the size that you want. Next, you'll need a piece of batting, flannel, or stable needle punched fleece, rough cut about an inch larger than your board. To keep things simple, we're just going to refer to this as batting from here on out. I'm using Thermolam today because it's nice and white, yet easy to clean with a lint roller. The fabric sticks to it really well, and I already had a big piece of it left over from another project, so I didn't need to buy anything. Next, you'll need a spray adhesive to adhere the batting to the board. I've tried glue sticks, but the ones I tried really didn't hold the batting very well. I do like Elmer's multi-purpose spray adhesive, but I'm currently out, so I'm using my 505 spray instead. Although it's marked temporary, I find that it holds up just fine. When design boards were first introduced by Lori Holt in the 1990s, she hot glued fabric binding to the edges of her boards, which is how I first learned to make them. She still sells them if you would prefer a lovely ready-made board. But we're going for fast and easy today, so I'm using 2-inch wide duct tape instead of a fabric binding. I embraced the fabulosity when I found these fancy patterns and colors on sale, but you can choose one or more plain colors of duct tape if that's what you prefer. I already mentioned that you'll need a cutter of some kind for the board. You can tell I'm using my paper crafts only, not fabric, rotary cutter, because I wrapped blue tape around the handle. You may also need some craft scissors for cutting the tape. Don't use your good fabric scissors. Okie doke, let's get this all cleared away so that we can make a design board. Both sides of my board have the same matte finish, so it doesn't matter which side I spray the adhesive on. If your board is shiny on one side, you get to pick which side to cover. I'm protecting my work surface with a piece of parchment paper that I had handy from something else. And when I'm spraying larger boards, I usually cut open a large plastic trash bag to cover my table. Once the board has a nice, even coat of spray, I'll be ready to add the batting. The thermolam I'm using is smooth on one side and kind of scratchy on the other. So I'll check first to see which side is facing up. I want the scratchy side to be facing up. Next, I'll center my board sticky side down on the batting and press with my hands. Then I'll flip it over and make sure everything is smooth on the front. If there happens to be a bubble or a wrinkle, you can usually pull the batting up very gently and reposition it. Then I'll be ready to trim off the excess batting around all four sides. You need to be extra careful when you're doing this because it's so easy to cut into the board rather than just next to it. I've tried lining up an acrylic ruler, even with the board, to try to protect it, but I found that the thickness of the ruler made it so the cutter had a harder time getting through the batting. So now I just take my time and cut right next to the board, and that seems to work the best. Now we're ready to finish the edges of the board. My duct tape is 2 inches wide, so I find what works best for me is to mark a line 3/4 of an inch from the edge of the board. I'm using short, smooth strokes with a mechanical pencil to get a clear line without having the pencil lead pull on the batting. This line will be hidden when I place my tape on the front of the board. I've tried wrapping the tape from the back to the front, but I find that it's easier to get a nice look on the front if I actually start wrapping on the front rather than bringing the tape from the back. I'll work my way around all four sides, marking each side as I go until all four sides are marked. One more to go. Make sure not to use blue chalk or a friction pen or something like that that might seep out from underneath the tape later. The lines aren't showing up real well on camera, but I can see them in person. Now for the tape. I'm really wrestling to get this roll started. It's super sticky. Working just off camera, I've cut a piece of duct tape long enough to hang off both sides of the board. Now I'm going to line it up just barely past my pencil line so that the marks won't be visible on the finished board. I'm trying not to stretch the tape, but just pat it very gently in place. Then I'll flip the board over and use my paper rotary cutter, not my good one. See, I grabbed the wrong one at first, so I got to switch it. And I'm going to use the edge of the board as my guide to trim the tape so that it's the same length as the board. So we'll just do one side, rotate it, and do the other. After both ends are trimmed, I'm going to bring the tape around first to the edge of the board and kind of smooth it into place along the edge of the board, just gently so I don't pull it or stretch it. And then I'll wrap it over the edge of the board and then to the other side. I'll do the opposite side in just a minute. So we'll cut the piece of tape to match. Here it comes. Super sticky. Lay it just barely covering the line. Here we go. Then we'll turn it over and trim the ends. Now that folded back on itself, but I was able to pull it away from the foam core pretty easily. Here we are trimming. And then as soon as it's trimmed, we'll wrap it around and then smooth it down, just like we did the first side. Again, just patting gently, smoothing it down, pressing it, but not pulling or stretching it. There we go. Okay. Now for the last two sides. I typically do these the same exact way as the first two, but I'm feeling a little fancy today, so I'm going to try to miter the tape on the back sides of the boards. Here I am trimming it just the way we did before. But this time, instead of wrapping it straight over the edge, I'm just going to take a little triangle off each corner to miter the edges. Now, I don't think it adds much to do it this way, but I do like to experiment. So here we go. I like the idea of the way mitering the last two sides can help avoid bulky layers of tape on the outer corners of the board, but I still want to make sure that the edges of the board are completely covered, and that's a little trickier with a miter. But either way is fine, so you can miter it or not miter it, whichever you prefer. When I was finished with this board, I compared it with some other boards that I had not mitered, and it was really hard to see the difference. So feel free to do as you like. But here we go. Let's finish this up. You don't have to miter it. You can bring it over just as it is. Almost done. Here it comes, wrapping around. And there we go. It does look nice, I have to admit. And here we are, a finished board. Let's all admire and how well the fabric stays in place even when I get crazy with the board. Isn't it great? Are you ready to make your own? Happy quilting!